Oi, oi. Actually, I might do two oi, ois, just especially for Ascot. We have got some decent racing this weekend. I'm going to go through a couple of cards on Saturday, Wetherby and Ascot, thoughts on there, and then Sunday there's a couple of okay-ish cards, smallish field sizes, but some races to look at nonetheless. There's potentially a few bets as well that could come out of this, so I'm just going to waffle. You listen if you want to listen, and then we'll see what we come with at the end. As I say always, please do like the video because that always helps. Do comment below as well because I think the interaction helps too. Handy to know what you guys are fancying, and like that, there could be ones to keep an eye on, ones to watch. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, but I know most of you have done, so thank you. Right, let's crack on. We'll go with Wetherby first. Now, we're not going to go through every single race. I'm just going to talk about the ones that I think are worth it because I do think this time of year can be a bit trappy for bets and confidence. There's a mare's hurdle race, a listed race at Wetherby. Molly Ollie's Wishes won this last year, I believe, and was interesting because it was the start of the season. They were talking about stepping up in trips, saying the trip wouldn't have been the right distance for her and things like that, but she was well backed and she hacked up, didn't she? She went like fairly close to the leader. Thought it was a pretty decent run, to be honest with you, so I'm expecting much the same. Now, it's got a different sort of weight variation this time. She was getting a bit of weight this time last year. Shouldn't make too much of a difference because I think she is the best runner in the race. Martello Sky, the main danger, according to the betting as well, is only £2 off in terms of what the weight they're carrying, so it gets £2 from Molly Ollie's Wishes, but does probably want a little bit further. But then I think Molly Ollie's Wishes does too. So I think it's a pretty tight race between the pair of them. I wouldn't want to be lumping into anything. Molly Ollie's Wishes was 3-1 for the race last year, 11-8 poke this year. I think obviously it's a different race and we know what she's done, but she didn't really finish the season that great last year. I thought she could have been an outsider for the long distance hurdle at Ascot, or is the long walk hurdle. I thought she could have run well there. Never even went to the race. So that wound me up a little bit in and around Christmas time. So borderline feel like that could be the place to maybe go. We'll have to see. She did win at Ascot in January after though, so happy days. So yeah, I think it looks a nice enough race. I wouldn't want to be getting stuck in at the prices. Too dangerous. Maybe one to watch. Let's see how they go. Then we've got the Grade 2 West Yorkshire Hurdle. This is a nice race. Now I'm going to talk about one horse in here in particular, Oscar Elite. Not going to win this race for the slightest, but I have had a poke on this horse for the Coral Gold Cup, the Ledbrook Trophy, the Hennessy. I think Oscar Elite is tons better than 139. I say tons. He's probably £10 better than that. I thought he ran really well at Cheltenham as well, and he's only £1 higher than he was there. Obviously, he was dog shit at Aintree, but he bled at Cheltenham. He's had breathing issues. I think he's had wind surgery. He has had wind surgery. This is clearly, for me, just a run to not affect his mark for a big handicap, and that big handicap is the Coral Gold Cup. So Joe Tizard has used this, or Colin Tizard's used this in the past. There has been some that have not been so good. Slate House was in it. There's another one, Copperhead, I think, as well, that didn't go on to do well in the race or even go and run in the race I'm talking about. But Native River was in here. He was a 7-2 poke, only just narrowly beaten. They talked about whether he was going to be staying over hurdles or not because it was such a good effort. Obviously, he was a better rated horse than Oscar Elite is. But my point is, I feel that this is a borderline stepping stone for bigger things. And I'm real keen on watching how Oscar Elite goes. Like, I don't expect him to be there or thereabouts, given the rate in golf and the fact that he is probably half a stone behind everything in this race, if not more, with some of the horses that are higher rated. But I'm still hoping for a fairly bold show, and I've backed him for the Hennessy. I'm still calling it the Hennessy, the Coral Gold Cup. So I'd advise, it's up to you, I'd advise getting stuck in. I like him. He is a bleeder, which is bad, and I've got a soft spot for the Tizard Yard. I feel like Joe starting this season would have had a few horses that he wants to have a decent start and he wants to attract some owners. So I feel like he's going to be setting a few horses up for big races this year. So maybe I'm being a little bit biased, but yeah, he's the keen one in there. Back to this race in isolation, let's try and look at him. Sporting John, I think, would win the race, but I just don't trust him to be 100%. You never sort of know what you're getting with him. When he's good, he's real good. When he's not, he's not. Prashima's interesting, but I don't think he should be good enough for a race like this. 300 through 5, a horse that's I do quite like as well. Got the string of ones next to his name. Better over fences though, and again, don't want to touch his mark, do they? So he can run as well as he wants in this. He could be competitive, but I think they've got bigger things. He'll be going for a Coral Gold Cup as well, I suspect. Indefatigable, the lovable mare, I love her. She's got a proper chance, I'd have thought. She's a 7-2 poke, only a small field. So really, I think Sporting John, Indefatigable would be the most likely winners of the race. Market-wise, would say the same. Oscar Elite, I'm interested in, but wouldn't be a betting race for me. Charlie Hall Chase, another Grade 2. Brave Man's Game Ahoy Senior is being pitched as the big matchup between the two of them. We have seen some quirky results in a Charlie Hall in the past. I think when you look at the official ratings of all these horses, it's very, very competitive. Like, it's a wide open renewal. I think that Ahoy Senior's better than Brave Man's Game. Oi Senior's jumping is what frustrates the life out of me, because he can jump really well at times, and then other times he can just jump pants. So we'll have to see. But he ran really well at Aintree, obviously, to go and win. Obviously, some horses maybe underperformed there, but I thought he ran really well at Cheltenham as well now. It would have been one of them that I just don't think Lahon Pressby should have let him have first run on him. I feel like he probably could have got closer, but we are where we are. So I feel like they're both good horses, clearly. I think that it's a bit being pitched as a bit of a matchup between the two of them. I wouldn't fancy Sam Brown at all. I used to think he was a heavy ground specialist. It's not the case, but I like the horse, but I don't think he's got a real chance. Pentadine probably hasn't got a real chance, but isn't far off his official mark. Eldorado Allen could go well, and I talked about Joe Tizzard, haven't I, already? Secret Invest down the bottom I don't think would be good enough to do it, but again, wouldn't be the biggest shock. So it is being pitched as this big match between Ahoy Senior and Brave Man's Game. Eldorado Allen is the sort of proven older horse with more experience that can put the two young bucks in their place. Brave Man's Game will be ready for this, I think, but I do also think that he'd be ready for this, but they must be thinking King George is the big target, and I don't think they'll care what happens. Think when Clanders Ober ran in that Betfair Chase, where he ran really well in hindsight, but then went and won at King George. I don't think he'll be fully wound up, so I wouldn't want to be back in Brave Man's Game in this instance. Ahoy Senior, I do think, would probably be more likely to be wound up. Now, I know that the Coral Gold Cup potentially could be a target for him to go into, but whether they'll do that or not, I wouldn't be 100% sure. I feel like he'd be ready for this, to be honest with you. So where the prices are at, I thought Ahoy Senior, maybe from a price perspective, I'd be tempted to go in on, but it would be more leaning on that than anything else. I do think Ahoy Senior will win. Be a cracking race. It just depends how he jumps, really, doesn't it? The rest of the card's got a couple of races that are borderline interesting, but not enough for me to waffle about. So we're going to leave them alone. I'll try and keep this concise. I think we're already 7 minutes in. Ascot, Goshen goes over a fence. He goes over a fence at Ascot. The Ascot fences are brutal as well. 2 miles, 3 furlongs, all he's going. He's got to jump 16 of these fences. They come up thick and fast. So I like the fact that they're doing it. He's obviously run well round there. He has won round there, but he won when he was like a 1-50 poke or something ridiculous. Probably wasn't that short, but he was short, and he has not run so well there. So I know he needs to go right-handed. I see this as a obvious starting point. He's putting the other 3 horses out the handicap. I would be not a backer at 11 to 8. I'd be a layer at that sort of price. But again, I don't know if I'd be balls enough to go and do it. See how the money goes. If he touches even money or shorter, I would probably I'd lay him. I cannot see how Goshen doesn't twat a fence. And considering there's 16 of him to go over, I could see him doing a couple in a row, to be honest with you. So we are where we are. We'll see how he does. Let's not forget that he is a flat horse, isn't he? That doesn't mean that he can't go over fences, but yeah, gosh, I wouldn't want to be picking someone else to take him on. I'd rather look at that. I'd rather look at the price wise and think, would you want 8 to 11 that he's going to get beat, or do you want 11 to 8 that he's going to win? And I'd rather say that he's probably going to get beat. We don't want to see it happen. Those horses are at the handicap. He's got everything in his favour in theory, but just looks a real hard ask. I just don't think he's going to be a horse who could take the fences, but happy to be proven wrong. Then there's a half-decent handicap hurdle after this. Anyhow, I'm asking, obviously dotted up the last couple of times. Beat Constitution in a point-to-point, so clearly that's going to be a status that gets put upon him. You can ignore the first few runs because they would have been to get a mark. I think he's run to about his mark, to be honest with you, but he is a 5-year-old, so he can improve. So I don't think he's got bundles up his sleeve. I don't think he's a 150s horse yet. I do think he's got the potential and the scope to improve for it. He is installed as favourite in this race. They might have some bigger targets, but I feel that they might as well just go and win this. Like, I know there's a Betfair hurdle or something that might potentially be something else, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to be getting smashed into anyway. Broomfield Berg, Nico's jumped off of him. Even John Joe O'Neill Jr. is not even taking the ride on him. James Bowen is. So he's almost a lost cause, isn't he? But I feel like he'll be thereabouts again. Washington for Ollie Murphy's a horse that I've always had a bit of a soft spot for. Think he could go okay. Magistrata as well. I cannot believe how pants this horse has been running and how low his rating's got. Again, another race I think looks interesting and half decent. At the prices, Magistrata, like, you couldn't be backing him with what he's been doing and how he's been finishing his last couple of races. But he's got the hood, tongue tie on. He's got Fresh from a Window, which is a classic Nichols thing to do anyway, isn't it? I feel like he's such a keen, bullish horse. If they can get him to settle, he might settle back, but I think he'll go forward enough. He'd be the sort of horse that I'll be looking at this weekend where I'm going to go, do you know what? I'm going to have a few quid on him to win Betfair pre-race. Probably do it fairly early before the race because he might shorten up nearer the time if he goes towards the front. But feel like I could lay him in running almost like a pointlessy bet, but I might be able to make a couple of quid out of that. Then the Premier Handicap, which looks like a real decent race on paper. I don't know who I'd fancy to win this race, but I know Nassalam, when he won at Ascot last season, when he beat Solo, I was pretty impressed with the run, to be honest with you. And he didn't jump the best. He was a bit sloppy in places, but I feel like he could go real close in this. So it wouldn't be a race I'm having a bet in, but Nassalam would be the one that I'd be more interested in than anything else. If someone wanted to know what I fancied, then we've got a decent, again, keep saying decent, we've got another decent handicap chase at Ascot. Our Power for Sam Thomas, Charlie Deutsch. Probably got to run fairly well, I would have thought. Should go fairly close. Fullback's a horse that frustrated me because I thought they could have won some big handicaps with him when he was a novice chaser. They ran him in a novice chase behind Carlisle, and then they ran him in a really pants novice chase after, but he was only rated 125 back then. They would have been able to mop up in a handicap with him. I feel like we're getting back to that sort of territory with him now. Like 139, I think, is a doable mark. He has pulled up round this course before, didn't jump very well, and was very keen. And then when he ran over in hurdles as well, it wasn't exactly probably like his favourite track. So he'd be one for another day, but he'd be one I want to keep an eye on. Looks a cracking race. There'll be definitely some winners out the back from there. There is a bumper at the end of it, but there's not too many in there that I want to get too deep into. Obviously, it'll be a race for watching. Let's crack on with Sunday's cards. Carlisle's probably the best place to look because we do have the Colin Parker intermediate chase, which means novices that aren't going to be novices much longer can still go in there, but full-blown novices can go in there too. There is a novices hurdle at the top of the card. 2 ex-pointers that I'll be very interested to see how they get on. I mean, technically there's 3, Cedar Row as well for John Joe, but I'm more interested in Rock On Cowboy and the King of Rye Hope, Dan Skelton and Ben Paulin. Again, I'm not suggesting these for betting, but very much keep an eye on it, see what the markets do in between and in behind those couple. Then we're just going to get ourselves on with the Colin Parker Memorial Intermediate Chase. Look, Karat's Rambler was a horse I put up for the Ultima. I love this horse. Back to him at the beginning of the season at Aintree last year. Think he's a proper weapon. This is an intermediate chase, so it's not a handicap. The way that the terms get in, he's got a bit to find with Miller's Bank, who unseated the other day. I think George just mentioned that Miller's Bank might even only have one ear, but all I'm saying is this wasn't Miller's Bank's first aim. He's in here almost because he didn't get his run, and maybe he needs run before he goes somewhere else, so they've got something planned. Whatever it is, I like Karat's Rambler. I like Karat's Rambler a lot. I do think he's a proper horse. Jumping can be a bit ropey. Will need further as well. So again, wouldn't be a race I'd be wanting to have a look to have a bet in, but I want to see how well he goes with a view to him potentially being a Coral Gold Cup horse too. But I like the Ratch. Then we've just got some other, I say they're okay as races. We've got some other like handicaps in there. There's some ones that to keep an eye on, but I feel like this weekend's very much more a case of opinions in what we think might win a race beforehand, and then keeping an eye on the bet and see how things are going. Not too many I want to get stuck in, to be honest with you. Huntingdon usually has a half decent card on the Sunday as well. Monmouth was supposed to be in, or was entered up in a couple. He was in the Kalahari King handicap chase, and then he was in this novices chase over 2 mile where Pentland Hills takes on Oakenrisk in a head-to-head. Think the ground's just too quick, and I can understand that I wouldn't want to be jumping a horse at Huntingdon. There is a juvenile hurdle. They do have the Fen juvenile there at some point in the year too. It doesn't look the best juvenile on paper, and that's not to be harsh, but I mean, we know that probably the best juvenile's going to come from Ireland, but I think it is a fairly steady enough race. Alan King's got a half decent one, Admiralty House, and Nicky Henderson's got Midnight Train in there as well, so I feel like I definitely want to keep around to see what they do, because if something does go and dot up in there, although it's not the deepest of races, still be worth keeping an eye on it. There's a couple of races over in Ireland as well this weekend, a couple of meetings, on the Saturday and the Sunday, but not interested in Galway. Had a look for some betting perspectives. There wasn't anything in there. So that's pretty much a muchness of what it is. So sorry there's not too many bets that might be in there for you guys, but we are getting to the point we're going to start ramping up. It won't be long now till we've got the November meeting at Cheltenham. We've got the Ladbrokes Winter Carnival coming up. Dan Royal will be there soon. There's loads of decent entries that are coming out. The Betfair Hurdle, the Great Woods Hurdle entries have come out. Obviously, we've seen the Coral Gold Cup entries have come out, so it's an exciting time. So be lucky, try and keep your powder dry, or at least just try and make the most of it, and I will see you again next week.